If you want lasting happiness, say goodbye to these 8 toxic habits. Everyone has bad habits. The real question is how they affect our lives and the lives of the people around us. When we're talking about toxic habits, we're talking about the habits that harm both ourselves and the people around us. They're also contagious. Not all toxic habits are equal, although they all tend to affect us negatively. But some of them are worse than others, and that brings us on to the meat of today's article. Let's take a look at the toxic habits that are stopping us from enjoying lasting happiness. 1. Being negative. Negativity becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, which means that if you expect that the worst will happen, it probably will. The trouble is that it's insidious and can creep up on us when we're least expecting it. That's why we need to keep an eye on our thoughts and be aware of them, which many people do by practicing mindfulness. If you catch yourself thinking negatively, the best thing to do is to reframe those thoughts into something positive. Instead of thinking, "I'm going to fail the assessment I have coming up," start thinking, "I'm looking forward to the challenge that this assessment will present me with." 2. Being overly critical. Criticism is often seen as an offshoot of negativity, but that's not always the case. You've probably heard of constructive criticism, and that's what's key here. The idea is to provide suggestions that could allow people to improve, building them up instead of tearing them down. It's also important to pick your moments and to only provide people with this kind of feedback if they ask for it. And whatever you do, don't just criticize for the sake of criticizing. Remember that you get back what you give out, and so if you're seen as being overly critical and only ever finding faults in things, that's going to come back to you. You shouldn't be surprised if people start criticizing you, and that's not going to bring lasting happiness. 3. Procrastination. Procrastination might not seem like a toxic habit to begin with, but bear with me. The problem with procrastination is that it stops us from fulfilling our full potential. Much of happiness comes from the feeling of accomplishment we get from a job well done, but we can't experience that if we never get anything done because we're busy procrastinating. It's important to acknowledge that we all experience procrastination to one extent or another, and that doesn't make us bad people. What really matters is whether you're able to overcome that urge to procrastinate and to get things done. 4. Overthinking. This is one that I struggle with myself. At least, I think I do. Overthinkers are more prone than most to analysis paralysis, the phenomenon we experience when we're given so many choices that we can't pick between them. This kicks in everywhere, from when we're picking out a bottle of wine to when we're choosing an internet service provider. The problem with overthinkers is that even after they make their decision, they tend to keep on thinking about it. They can't achieve lasting happiness because they can't stop thinking about their decisions and whether they made the right ones. 5. Resisting change. Change is a constant in all of our lives, and if we want to find lasting happiness, we have to accept that. If we try to resist change by holding on to everything we have, we're setting ourselves up for a disappointment. It's like trying to swim against the tide, and the water will eventually overtake us. Instead of wearing ourselves out trying to resist the inevitable, we're better off learning to practice acceptance. By doing so, we can learn to weather change and to adapt ourselves to it when we come out the other side. 6. Holding grudges. Holding grudges is no way to find lasting happiness. It puts me in mind of gang warfare, where one person gets shot and then someone else gets shot in retaliation, and so on and so forth until it escalates to a full-blown gang war. Nobody wins. Not all grudges are this extreme, but this example should give you an idea why holding grudges isn't a good idea. It's no way to find happiness, either in the present or the future. Even if you make good on your grudge, it's not going to make you happy. Instead, learn to practice forgiveness. 7. Self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is what happens when we're so sure we're going to fail that we end up making sure of it ourselves. For example, if you're entering a talent competition but you don't think you're going to win it, you might not practice or put as much effort into your performance as you otherwise could have. Back when I used to work for a company, I saw people self-sabotaging themselves all the time when they came in for job interviews. We'd have a good idea who we wanted to hire from their resumes, but then they'd do a terrible job at interview and we wouldn't take them on. The bottom line is if you want to be happy and successful, you need to build yourself up instead of putting yourself down. 8. Lack of goals. If you duck responsibility, you'll also end up not setting any goals. Goals are important because they give you something to work towards, and if you have something to work towards, then it's going to be easier for you to get out of bed in the morning. Without goals, you're just on autopilot, blindly stumbling through life with no real purpose and no goal to work towards.